What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the fighting game tutorial series, we're going to be going over tag team matches part 2. If we come into our game here, it's going to be very buggy. A lot of things are going to break because our game has been set up to this point for 2 characters. Adding in these extra characters is going to make things a little bit broken, so that's to be expected, and the next few episodes are addressing all the issues that come up with this. So when we come into the game here, we'll see that a lot of it is working as intended, right? Our camera's still working, our characters are here, our HUD is set up properly, and I can jump back and I can see these other characters have spawned. For right now, I don't have a way to select my other characters for my second and third character on my character select screen, so I'm just using the character that we chose as all of our characters. So in solos we have 1 mutant, in duos we have 2 mutants, in trios we have 3 mutants. This is a trios match. And you can see that there are these characters on each side. Now, because these characters aren't possessed and don't have the proper data, such as information about the other characters in the world, they don't have the fall-off behavior, the sliding off the character's behavior. If I'm to jump on my other controllable character here, I will slide off of them. So you'll be able to walk on them. They're actually going to be floating because their character movement component hasn't been triggered because they're not possessed, so they don't have gravity. All that's okay though, because that's what we're going to address. We're going to fix all of these issues. So we're going to get the character spawning. That's the first thing. That's what you see here. And then we're going to fix all the issues that come up with having multiple characters that we have to keep track of in our game. It might look like a lot, but I promise it's actually not too bad. Before we hop into this episode, if you want to get caught up in the series and see how we've done hitboxes to our camera and animations, I'll link you to this episode right here in the top right corner. But if you only care about tag team matches, you don't have to watch the whole series to implement this, but I do recommend you watch the previous episode, which is the first episode on tag team matches, because a lot of that behavior is being expanded on in today's episode, so that is useful to understand and have in your project. Now with those out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series. This episode is going to be another simple one. Just like the first tag team episode, all we're going to be doing is spawning the characters at a slight offset from their initial location and determining how many characters should spawn. Then we'll address a few of the issues that come with having multiple characters on a team in this series. So for now, let's start in the code. Specifically, let's go into our base game instance.cpp and let's make sure we set our team mode type to the proper type. So in the previous episode, we implemented this enum where we have these 3 team mode types of solo, duo, and trio, but we do need to know which one we are in, and since we don't have any menu logic to enter solo, duo, or trio, we do need to forcibly set this in the base game instance. So in the constructor, I'm setting it to be whatever mode I want at the moment. Duo or trio will work. Just make sure it's not solo for this episode because we are going to need to be testing our tag team matches. Once we're done with this, we want to go into our fighter template game mode.h. In here, we need to keep track of all of the characters that are on a person's team. So if player 1 has 2 characters on their team, if we're in a duos match, we need to keep track of both of those, and same with player 2's 2 characters. In fighter template game mode, we were tracking 1 character using this player 1 and player 2 variable in here. We now need more than just a singular pointer to this type. This is my base character class, so all my characters are of this class. And to do that, we can use an array. An array can keep track of all of the characters that we have on one team. So I've added these 2 variables here today. The player 1 and player 2 variables can remain for now. There's going to be a lot of transferring that needs to happen before we can take them out and successfully transfer them over to these variables. But we should at least have these variables in here for today's episode. So I'm adding a T array of a fighter template character pointer. I've called it team 1 characters. And I have T array of a fighter template character pointer team 2 characters. You could also call it player 1 characters, player 2 characters, whatever your name that you want to use is. Just make sure that we have a way to track multiple characters per player or per team. Once we have this set up, we don't need to add anything by default. You don't have to add anything to the constructor. The next thing we're going to do is go back into the editor and go to the game mode blueprint. The editor is back open, so we want to go to our blueprint, which is, for me, default game mode BP. Then we want to go into our spawn players function. So spawn players is where we were grabbing the player starts, determining which character should spawn at which location, determining what class they were, like if they were the mutant, the mannequin, or a different character, setting the players to those characters, possessing them with a specific controller, even handling some AI behavior. Now we're going to add more to this today, but this is becoming too big. We need to edit this and make sure we can do this in the code to make this a lot cleaner and a lot easier. So one of the things we're going to be tackling while fixing all the errors that come up from the duos and the trios modes is also converting things that are in Blueprint to be code. Because as these blueprints get bigger, they're much harder to manage, and really it's time that we transfer them over and get the performance benefit of code as well. Put it in here first, blueprint it in this episode, then we'll convert it all at once in one episode, and our lives will be good. So at the very end of each set of logic, we were setting possessed pawn, so the player controller knew what pawn they were possessing. Now after that, I've added a bunch of new logic for today, and this logic is going to add the characters to our new arrays that we just set up, and it's also going to spawn new characters based on the team mode type in the game instance. Add them to the array as well. I'm setting them at different offsets so they don't all spawn inside of each other in the same location. So starting out here, after we set possessed pawn in the top section where we're setting player 1, I want to add player 1 to my team 1 characters array. So since this is our game mode blueprint, we should have access to that variable we just set up. So get team 1 characters, drag off of it and type add unique. And the reason we're doing add unique is so that we can't have two instances of the same exact character. Say I had two mutants on my team. They're both their own entity. They're separate entities. So I only need one of each of those entities in the array. And then for what we're adding, it's going to be player 1, get player 1, and pass that in. That's what we have here. Now, after this, I want to grab my game instance reference. This is something that I have in the game mode from the event graph. Right in begin play, I was getting the game instance, casting it to our game instance type, and saving it out so we could access it later. The game instance is what has the team mode type, which we're going to need to know if we should spawn other characters here or not. So I'm going to go back to spawn players. I'm going to grab my game instance reference. I'm going to drag off of this and get my team mode type and get that. Then I want to drag off my team mode type and bring it into a switch statement, switch on E team mode type, and this will allow us to determine what type of match it is. So if it's solo, we don't need to spawn any other characters. We've already spawned one and added it to the array, so we're done here. But if it's duo or trio, we do need to spawn them. If it's duo, it only spawns one more character, adds it to the array. If it's trio, it spawns two more characters and adds them to the array. So determine character class is actually what spawns our character. We quite literally determine what selection the player has made and then spawn that actor. If we go back to spawn players, we can call determine character class. Then we have the target, which is self. The transform is where we want to spawn this character. I'm just setting a value of 200 units away from the initial spawn, and the way we do that is like this. So wherever we are passing in our get actor transform into the initial transform on the first character we spawn, determine character class, basically the character that we've been controlling for the last 231 episodes, we want to use that transform still. I'm doing that here. I'm dragging off the return value, dragging this into a break transform. This will get us everything we need to edit the transform. The rotation and scale are fine. We want to edit the location. So I'm going to right click on that pin and split the struct pin. Then I get the X, Y, and Z location. The X location is our depth. We don't want to edit that. The Z location is our height. We don't want to edit that. So if you look at your level here, you have this little compass area in the bottom left, and you can see your axes. Y is my horizontal axis, and so that's the location that we want to modify. So I'm dragging off my location Y, and I did add. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, this will be float plus float. But if you're in Unreal Engine 5, it's just add. And I'm just hard coding a value of -200 because we'll likely assign a real value to this that we decide. So -200 is fine. Now we need to make a new transform. So you see I have these two nodes here, but we have to pass these into a new transform to actually make it. So I'm going to right click, make transform, which will make a new transform structure. And we have our location, rotation, and scale. We can right click on the location and split the struct pin. We want to pass the X off of the break into the make, the Z of the break into the make, the rotation of the break into the make, and the scale of the break into the make. The only thing that's different is the addition of the location Y, and our offset is going to be what goes into the location Y here. That's how we get this node right here. Now this make transform returns a value, and that's the transform we want to use for our characters when we're in duo mode. So you see I have the return value going out here, and when I call determine character class for duo, I'm passing in that transform. Player index on determine character class is 0 because this is for player 1 or team 1, so that still applies. Now the last thing we need to do is add the new character to our team 1 characters array. To do that, we can get our team 1 characters array, add unique, and pass in the result of character reference that is created from determine character class. That's what we have here. Now for trio is really the same thing as duo in terms of we do need to spawn that second character and add them to the array, but we need to add another character after that. So you'll notice trio is doing the exact same thing. You can copy and paste it, or even using the same transform. But after those nodes, we have another set, so we need to edit the transform again. So the return value of the transform that we just made is being broken again. We're splitting the struct pin to modify the location Y even further, making a new transform, calling determine character class again, passing in that transform, using a player index of 0, and then adding that character to team 1 characters array. And now duos and trios for the first team is set up. We need to go down to the bottom set of logic here where we're setting player 2 to assign player 2's team correctly. Now, because of some temporary logic we put in here, we were testing AI because we have our AI behavior going on in the background here. So we can either be controlled by a player or controlled by AI. Either way, at this point, I am opting to spawn more characters of that type. This is accurate because even if we're a human fighting AI, we still want to be able to have a tag match. So regardless of what path we go, I end up meeting up here. So these were the last nodes in spawn players previous to this episode. Everything I'm highlighting after this is new. You'll see after the ending logic before, I'm now adding player 2 to the characters array. I've actually used the wrong one here. This should be team 2 characters. So I'm going to fix that right here. Team 2 character should be adding unique on player 2. Player 2 is what we're setting previously. And we need to still assign that character as part of the team because they are part of the team. Now, after that, it's going to be very, very similar to the first player logic that we did just above. So we're going to get our game instance reference, get the team mode type, perform a switch on our eTeam mode type from the game instance, and then call determine character class if it's duo or trio. If it's solo, we don't need another character, so no reason to spawn one. If it's duo, we're calling determine character class again. We need to pass in a transform. We're going to use the same transform that was passed into the original determine character class, just like with player 1. It was also passed into the AI controller that we were spawning. So that same transform is being broken, split. The location Y is being altered. So above, in player 1's behavior, I was adding -200 because I wanted to move the characters to the left. And I want their second and third character on the team to spawn behind the first character. I did this for the first break transform, and I also did this for the second break transform. But now for player 2's transform, I'm just adding a +200. I want the second and third characters for player 2's team to be behind them, characters to spawn to the right of them. So pass along X, Z location, Y with your offset, rotation, and scale into a make transform. Now for the duo, we're using that transform right here, and we're using a player index of 1 because this is player 2's team, so player index of 1 would be correct because player index 0 is player 1, or player 2, so we want player index 1. Team 2 characters, call add unique, and pass in the character reference from determine character class. Now in trios, we want to do the exact same thing. Again, it's copy and paste. We're even using the same transform, but we're adding new logic for the third character that gets spawned. So we're breaking that transform that we just made, adding another 200 to it, passing everything else along as is, then using that transform in a new determined character class function call with a player index of 1, and then taking that character reference and adding it to Team 2 characters array. That way we have 3 characters for Team 1 and Team 2. At this point we would technically be good, but you will likely get an error if you jump on one of the characters' heads and crash because of something that we never set up in our fighter template character's tick function. So do what I do here. Take your first player and jump on one of the other characters. Not the controllable character, but either the duo or the trio, or you're standing on them like this. If you're able to do that, great. If you're not, and you crashed like I did, then we need to edit something, and that is going to be the errors related to other player. So when you close, there will be errors. This is okay. Remember, we are going to be fixing these over the next few episodes. Some of these are complicated because they're not simply solving the error. We actually want to modify our logic to fix the root cause of the issue. Let's go back to Visual Studio, and let's go to fightertemplate_character.cpp, and let's scroll down to our tick function. If you've been following the series, you know we have a way to slide off characters' heads. I even mentioned it earlier in this episode. That logic is in here. We check to see if we're stuck inside of an enemy. If we are, we're going to push them outside of each other. Now, in a 2-character match, this was always valid. Other player was always valid, right? We always had one character, knew who the other character they were fighting was. With this new change, other player might not be valid, but we can still run into this logic. So we need to add an if statement in here within the if is stuck an enemy, if other player. So essentially all this behavior was just in this top if statement. Now everything but the last line, is stuck an enemy equals false, is being added to this if statement if other player. Basically, is there another player value assigned to this character? If there's not, we can assume that we will crash because other player isn't valid, but we're trying to grab their location, and of course we can't do that. So just adding this if other player check will fix your crash and will allow you to play normally even though it's a tag team match. Any other issues that are within your error log are okay. They are part of the larger issue with tag team matches that we need to address in the next episode. So there you go guys, that is tag team matches part 2. If this video helped you spawn your characters for tag team matches, then please subscribe. It does more for myself in the series than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate that. I also want to give a huge shout out to all the kind names on the screen here. Thank you guys for all the love and support. Really appreciate it. If you're interested in checking out the Patreon benefits, YouTube membership benefits, or Discord subscription benefits, then click on that link in the top right corner. If you ran into any issues while following this episode, feel free to go to the Discord community. The support in there is completely free, and there's a lot of kind people who are willing to help. Anyway guys, that's all I got for you, so thank you so much again for watching. I'm Shawnthebro. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.